Austin became the only major city outside of New York to legalize single-stair apartment buildings. That's nice. Do you ever think that the ADA's gone too far? No, not really. That's quite pretty. Single-stair apartment buildings makes apartment development way more viable on a smaller scale. Like, look at this. This is 4 homes in the square footage or the land use of a single home, and it's got the nice profile of a of a townhome. The footprint, thank you. Yeah. What did you call that? A single stair? A single stair. Like it. Have you ever been in an apartment building? Basically, every apartment nowadays has like a double staircase with a big hallway. Whereas this one, I assume, has a single little staircase that runs up the back. This is a render? Okay, well, whatever. I'm just describing. It has a single stairwell that runs up the back, just a little one that you walk up, and then you can arrive at whatever floor you want. How many lifts, though? Do you mean elevators? Presumably none. That would massively increase the cost of development. And the size, yeah. So it's not accessible for wheelchair users? Nope. My apartment here is a staircase for each unit. Yeah, it's just such a waste of space. Isn't that illegal? No, the whole point of the post is that it's not illegal. Isn't that a bad thing? Do you... No? I think it's okay for some homes to not be accessible to people in wheelchairs. I think that's fine. If I was in a wheelchair, I would simply not live here. You can live in the 99.99999% of homes that are not... Guys, this is already the case. Duplexes already have just a staircase that leads... There are already apartment types that exist where there's a second floor that you don't have a ramp or elevator to get up to. That's already common. There are duplexes, there are separated apartments, there are double stair apartments that don't have elevators. That's already pretty common. It's not like this isn't new. Disabled people can also just live on the ground floor. Well, the ground floor here is probably a lobby, but it's like a art thing. I don't know, but sure. So I don't have disabled friends yet then? Yeah, okay, but like, I guess, yeah. It's already like that. There are just like there are lots of places in the world where you can't get there if you're in a wheelchair, and nothing will ever change that. Like you can't put an elevator on every hiking trail, every little staircase in the city, like everything. Like yeah, that's how it is. It's a disability. You have less abilities. It's unfortunate, but it's also not really like workable. The solution would to simply have better legs. So I don't know, get on it if you can. Or carry your friends inside and give them a little kiss. Mwah. Yeah, so maybe we shouldn't build new inaccessible buildings. I think we should. I disagree. I think we should. I think that disabled people have had it easy for too long. Yeah, I think we should ban wheelchairs. This building is useless and will be demolished in 4 years to make more usable housing. How? Why? It's four homes on the footprint of one. New York is like this. I don't get it. There's no sense in insisting that it fits the footprint of a single home. Buy a couple of plots and build across them. Do you think you really don't think there might be any kind of advantage to being able to build apartments that fit smaller footprints? Like there might be zoning or space constraints, or if you're doing new development, you might only have the space for a single building plot and not like for a mega apartment complex. Just simply, I have a solution. Turn every open plot into a commie block. I love my single family home. Sorry, this is one thing I don't agree with Vaush on. What are you talking about? We're not even talking about that. We're talking about being able to build small footprint apartments. What are we talking about? This is a safety issue. You need 2 stairwells. You don't, though. I don't think that's true. Yes, you do. Why? That's fire code? Then have an external fire escape that's accessible via a window in the back, like in New York. Yeah, also, like, don't set your house on fire. Idiot. There is no external escape. You can build single staircase apartment buildings with an external escape. Again, this is like the signature look of New York. Like we're talking about an extension of a housing design style that is very common around the world, and it like you like think in your head what a New York apartment looks like. You've probably seen them before in like a movie or something. Here's a video on how the multiple stairwell code is outdated. It's like the apartment equivalent of mandatory parking minimums, where it drives up development costs so much, and it's so unnecessary. Yeah, like this shit. Get rid of this crap on the left, man. Give me some of that
Quaint
shit on the right.
walk-up apartments like this one behind me are a beloved feature in cities around the world. They're inviting and full of character. But here in North America, they are not allowed to be built today. Instead, our apartments are big and imposing, often stretching
and awful looking, man.
Across an entire block. And the reason why really comes down to one reason: staircases. And these buildings are a common element in some of the most desirable neighborhoods in the world. So why don't we build these apartments here in North America? Well, in Canada and the US, all apartments above 2 or 3 stories need to give their units access to 2 separate staircases. We're some of the only countries across the world that are this strict about this requirement. In most other places, it only kicks in after 6 or more stories. And this one rule has huge implications. Staircases take up a lot of space.
We build so many of our buildings with wood, our cities burned down too many times. We got paranoid. I think that might literally be one of the reasons. Like, they were building two-door housing in England 600 years ago, made out of, like, stones, dirt, and feces, which is basically, like, flame-proof. But over here in America, we were building pioneer housing. It burned down every 5 years. So they were like, we need to be way the more careful.
And fitting 2 of them in a small building means that there's much less usable floor space on every floor. As a result, developers here construct much larger buildings so that the staircases and hallways take up a much smaller proportion of the overall building. It's why apartments in North America in general are much bigger and wider than their European counterparts.
I know, clear.
Now, I'm not here to fat shame our bulky North American apartments. No, the reason I care about this issue is because this requirement is causing some major problems. For starters, it's making it much more difficult to build more housing. Big buildings require big properties, and in many cases, finding a property large enough for a large apartment requires a land assembly. This is where you convince...
This is also why, by the way, it's impossible to have the cool, like, commercial boutique vibe that you get walking around New York or Tokyo in a lot of American cities. Because commercial properties in America are like, oh, you want to build a store here? Okay, here's 40,000 square feet. Yeah, this lot was zoned for like a Walmart, basically, you know, like a Costco kind of deal. You wanna set up a store here? Okay, well, it's $50 trillion a month rent, and good luck filling up the space, you know? Meanwhile, there are some amazing shops you can find in real countries, real cities and real countries, where it's like 400 square feet. Because what else do you need? Literally, it's like a room with stuff in it, and then there's a desk with a guy behind it. Or like a table or something. You just walk in. It's like a tiny little space, you know?
It's multiple landowners to sell their properties to you at the same time so that you can combine them into one big lot. As you can imagine, this is a risky process that requires negotiations, legal reviews, and a ton of money. Single staircase buildings, on the other hand, can be much smaller, which means you can often build them on just one property. I think that makes these buildings an important solution right now, because cities today are increasingly looking to add more housing into their single-family neighborhoods. Properties in these areas are already small to begin with, and I think it'd be very difficult to add more housing at scale without single staircase buildings. But this requirement isn't just making it more difficult to build new housing, it's also limiting the kinds of housing we can build. The reason why comes down to the hallway connecting the 2 staircases. It cuts the building in 2, which means most of the units on either side of it can really only fit 1 bedroom.
Yup.
Let me explain.
So this is why we this is why, like, apartments are basically not suitable for families in a lot of cases. I mean, families still have to make do in there, but it doesn't feel right because everyone's like, oh, an apartment? Well, that's where, like, college students live or something. Why? Why can't you have apartments that are 2-bedroom houses?
So this hotel I'm staying at kind of gives you an idea of what that looks like on the ground. I've got access to a stair over there and a stair over there, but what that really means is that the rooms essentially can only have a window on one side of the wall because there's a unit over there, and there's a unit over there, which is, you know, fine for a hotel room, but for an apartment, this layout can be really challenging to work with. All bedrooms are required by law to have a window, and when you only have windows on one side of your apartment, it's challenging to fit any more than 1 or maybe 2 bedrooms into this layout. To demonstrate, let's take a look at the floor plan of an apartment in Quebec City. Most of its units only have windows on one wall. In fact, this poor unit only has windows on one corner.
Ew.
And because of that, all these units pretty much have to be 1-bedroom apartments. This is a problem because our cities are facing a major...
Are we seriously attacking windows as a legal requirement? No. We're saying that if you could build single staircase, smaller plot apartments, then you could have windows on every side. Because it's like the footprint is just one townhouse, basically. We want more windows.
Shortage of apartments with 3 or more bedrooms, the kinds of spaces that are better suited for families. In Metro Vancouver, 3-bedroom apartments make up 2% of units in the region's rental market, while studios and 1-bedroom apartments make up almost 75%.
That is insane. That is insane, dude. 74% of the available housing, studio and what? This is what? No wonder nobody's having kids. Jesus Christ. Insane housing market driven entirely by speculative investment and psychopaths looking to maximize price per square foot, as opposed to like any kind of like they're playing city skylines and they're like, well, which zoning type like maximizes profit? I'm not looking at what people are demanding, what maximizes profit, and then they just slap that down. And then you wonder why a house in Vancouver is $4 or $5 million or whatever.
And this shortage of family-friendly apartments is where I really see the potential of point access block buildings. When you have one staircase, you don't need a hallway, which means that units can wrap around the staircase in all sorts of different ways. That makes it easier to have more walls with windows, which allows for apartment layouts with more than 1 bedroom. Check out this apartment layout from France. You can see that the single staircase allows for a 3-bedroom.
Oh my God, look at that. And this isn't just one house per floor.
Unit, 2 2-bedrooms, and 2 1-bedrooms.
That's look, yeah, that looks pretty good. This is the little hallway right here.
And you know what else that's good for?
What did they change? They only have one staircase, which means that they can build around that central hub and make sure that every that these all get multiple window sides.
And 2 1-bedrooms.
Except for this one down here in the bottom center, which is still a 1-bedroom. But you know, diversity is fine. There's nothing wrong with 1-bedroom houses. It's just like that can't be the only thing available. Does that have fire escapes? I assume so. Probably. I don't know what fire code is in France. I assume that it's up to code. They're not showing us like an illegal building.
And you know what else that's good for? Smelly roommates. Having open windows on different sides of an apartment makes it easier for air to move through the unit, which provides natural cooling and ventilation. Another upside of the point access block. I'm going to pause this video for a sec because I'm sure some people will point out that...
Whose content am I stealing? Hold on. About here? 1.9 million views. Okay, it's a popular video. This is very good.
There's this thing called scissor stairs that kind of addresses this issue. This is when 2 stairs crisscross down one column together, effectively taking up less space than 2 separate staircases. I don't want to digress too much, so I'm just going to list a few reasons why, in my opinion, scissor stairs aren't a great replacement for single stairs, but feel free to debate me in the comments.
They still need a corridor connected to stair entrance to take more space. It creates a single straight run, meaning there is no switchback condition with a landing hallway. If you trip down a scissor stair, you are going to fall twice as far and are more likely to be injured than if you trip down a switchback stair. Huh. They require fire separation, meaning they're usually made of concrete, which adds costs and complexity. They're still not permitted in most of the U.S. since 9/11. Okay. And they're often not permitted in low-rise apartments like Vancouver. Okay, interesting.
So, why do we have this rule? Why does every apartment require 2 staircases?
I didn't think about that actually, but yeah, those kinds of staircases are more dangerous, aren't they? Because if you have a single one, like if you imagine we're cutting this in half hamburger style, so we only have like one staircase wrapping down like this. If you fall, you go boom. And then if you fall again, you go boom. And then if you fall again, you go boom. Whereas during a double, the scissor stair, you go trip boom. Like there's twice as much of a distance, and that can be dangerous, right? Because the difference between falling down a half landing versus a full landing is huge, right? You have to assume. I've never fallen down a staircase, but I feel like that's got to make a pretty big difference. Oh my God, you're so full of shit. Why? I'm just trying to live, man. Architect here have no idea what you're on about, but you're all cunts, just logged in. Love how everyone's suddenly a fire engineer. Oh my God, you're so full of shit. Okay.
I don't want to digress too much, so I'm just going to list a few reasons why, in my opinion, scissors are worst building codes. Back in the day, one of the biggest threats to your life in the city was dying in a fire. That, and maybe contracting tuberculosis. In fact, every now and then, an entire city would go up in flames, like Toronto in 1849, Montreal in 1852, Quebec City in 1866, Vancouver in 1886, St. John's in 1892, Westminster in 1890, Ottawa in 1900,
you ready for it?
And Toronto again in 1904.
Oh, they didn't mention Seattle.
That's why cities across North America began to create robust fire safety regulations like this double staircase rule that's still in effect today. The idea behind it was quite simple. If you're in a building that's on fire, you don't want to be stuck with only one option to get out. What if the staircase is full of smoke or blocked or, on fire? So this was a very understandable rule. It was about our safety. But you might be wondering, why is it then that this rule is so strict in just North America? Well,
if it doesn't really pass the sniff test, right? You need to have two interior staircases if there's a fire. Well, if it's a scissor lift, the staircases are right next to each other, which means that heat would be transferring through them. So probably that wouldn't help that much. And also smoke would be the main issue. I would think an exterior fire escape is obviously the best solution, because if a building's on fire, if you make it outside onto a balcony, you're pretty much safe. You're pretty much safe. The fire is probably not like blasting you so hard that it's getting you when you're like 3 feet outside on the scaffolding exterior, and the smoke can't get you anymore. Well, I mean, it can, but like you're outside. So that seems like the safe option.
Cities in Asia and Europe had already dealt with this issue centuries before, but their approach was to require buildings to be made of more fireproof materials, like brick and stone. North American cities, on the other hand, were growing quickly, and it was much quicker to build it out of wood than to painstakingly lay bricks and stones. Plus, wood was more readily available in North America, and with the invention of the automobile, cities were on the cusp of suburban sprawl, which would put much less pressure on building compact apartment buildings downtown.
This is what whites fled to get away from black people. This is the American dream people talk about when they talk about the 50s. Early suburbia was worse, not better, than modern suburbia. Look at how blighted this looks. It literally looks like a wasteland, like an actual wasteland. No wonder there's a stereotype about boomers like being trained to mow their lawn every Sunday or whatever. Everything is just lawn for no reason. Why the fuck? Who would build shit like that? Who could live in like New York or Chicago or Philadelphia or whatever and then be like, you know what people really want? Everyone wants to pretend they live on like a ranch or something, except instead of having crops or animals, they have featureless, useless grass that they have to take care of for no reason. I don't know. And the cars parked on the street. This was early. This was before they started like mandating garages. This was before they started mandating every construction had a garage, I assume, because these cars parked in the street. Look how wide the road is. This road is wide enough for like fucking 2 lanes with a parking divide. Oh.
Sprinkle in a little bit of classism around housing types, and you have our North American compromise for the building code. Build with less fireproof materials, but compensate with stricter regulations. So sure, we might have had our suburban sprawl here, but at least we got safer buildings. With this double staircase requirement, we've saved countless of lives, while in the rest of the world, people are still perishing in fires in their single staircase buildings. Take that, Amsterdam. Well, that's not exactly true. As you can see on this chart, the US and Canada don't have the fewest fire deaths per capita, not by a long shot. It turns out there are so many other factors that contribute towards fire safety. In fact, it seems like the real success story of our building codes hasn't been so much about helping people escape fires, but preventing them in the...
I like his quilted bomber. Yeah, they're called jacket liners. It's essentially like a separate piece that used to be attachable via buttons to the inside of a US field jacket. So if it was cold, rather than wear a new jacket, they would take this little like bit of down-filled quilted padding on the inside, and they would button it so that it became like a fuller jacket.
First place. For example, regulating the materials buildings are made out of, requiring fire doors, pressurized staircases, sprinklers, fire alarm systems, and fire extinguishers. Today, almost every aspect of your home has been vetted for fire safety. Even your mattress is required by law to be made out of fire-resistant materials.
What are you doing?
Nothing. Those requirements have also coincided with...
I was about to say, I was like, I wouldn't go testing that. Mattresses are really expensive. That's
very important cultural change. In most places, smoking indoors is now prohibited. As a result, building fires have decreased about 50% over the past several decades, and they've become much less severe. So this requirement to have 2 staircases is hardly the most significant improvement we've made to fire safety by a long shot. And when it gets in the way of new housing supply and family-sized apartments, it does make you wonder, do we need this rule at all? Well, personally, I think that doing away with this rule altogether would be too drastic. It exists for a reason, and in my opinion, the problem isn't the rule itself, but just how broadly we've applied it.
Okay. I think I've gotten the information that I wanted out of stealing this video shamelessly. This was a really nice video. Thank you to the person who linked it.